Okay, so today we stroll right into the engine room of your life where your choices are quietly steering the ship even when you're too distracted to notice. You're probably not wearing a toga or meditating atop a Grecian hilltop, but don't worry, the ancient Stoics weren't all mystics and marble busts either. They were practical, sometimes grumpy, and deeply concerned with one central thing: what you can control and what you can't, and karma. Well, it's not just cosmic spreadsheets tallying good and bad deeds. It's more like the echo of your inner discipline or the lack of it rippling outward into the world. You wake up, the coffee spills, your inbox bursts into flames, and the guy in traffic seems like he trained in Rage Olympics. You're not a monk, you clench your jaw. Rehearse 1,000 things you could have said better, but pause. That moment right there, that's your first encounter with Stoic karma. Not something magical, not a divine reward system, but a pattern that begins in how you choose to respond again and again. Karma, to the Stoic, isn't fate, it's the repercussion of your posture toward reality. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Sure, he also had power over armies, senators, and half the known world. But the fact that he considered self-mastery his actual power tells you something. Karma, for him, wasn't about waiting for justice from the stars. It was about becoming the kind of person whose inner life cast long shadows, someone whose presence changed a room because their integrity didn't budge. Now imagine you're standing at a forked road. One path is reaction. You lash out, blame others, gossip, complain, doom scroll. The other is response. You pause, notice, accept, act clearly. You take the second path once, and not much happens. Twice, and you begin to notice your mornings don't spiral so easily. 10 times, and you become someone people trust. This is how Stoic karma builds. It's not glamorous. It's compost, not fireworks, but it nourishes the roots of something that lasts. Let's take a weird detour into ancient Rome. Around 64 AD, a great fire destroyed much of the city, and Nero, yes, the fiddle guy, blamed it on the Christians. But historians still debate whether it was actually a city planning accident or political scapegoating. Here's the twist: the Stoics of the time weren't panicking about fires or conspiracies. They were writing about character. Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher, was calmly teaching that even if someone burns your house down, they can't burn your dignity unless you give it to them. That's Stoic karma again. Your reactions are the seeds of your future, and you don't have to be on fire to experience this. Think of something small. Someone criticizes you unfairly. You instinctively want to retaliate or sulk, but instead, you stop, take a breath, ask yourself, is this in my control? If it's not, you let it pass like weather. If it is, you act with calm. That one act of mental clarity doesn't just feel good in the moment, it reinforces a habit. You start trusting yourself. That's karma, Stoic style, self-trust built from consistent action. It's not flashy, it's not trending on TikTok, but it builds the kind of life that doesn't shatter in strong wind. Now here's something odd. Modern neuroscience accidentally caught up with the Stoics. Studies show that when you consistently respond to stress with mindfulness and intention, you rewire your brain toward resilience. Your amygdala, the panic center, starts dialing it down. Your prefrontal cortex, home of reason, steps up. The ancient Stoics didn't need brain scans to know this. They observed it. They practiced it. They left us a map. You're holding it now, even if it's covered in metaphorical coffee stains. Here's a quirky fact. The word karma originally means action. It's not fate. It's not punishment. It's a chain of cause and effect built from choices. The Stoics didn't use the word, but they lived the idea. If you act in alignment with nature, by which they meant rationality, virtue, and presence, your life follows a deeper harmony. If you act from impulse, fear, or pride, you might still look successful, but you're hollow inside. Stoic karma isn't measured by applause, it's measured by how much sleep you lose from betraying your own values. You may not think of your everyday moments as sacred battlegrounds, but they are. Every email you don't send in anger, every deep breath you take instead of shouting, every kindness you offer without expecting applause, it adds up. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be passive, it trains you to be precise. It's like lifting weights for your moral spine. And here's the fun part. People might think you've turned into some calm, wise magician, but really, you've just stopped feeding your chaos. You've begun to see reality not as a fight but as a field to walk with balance. You might wonder, what's the payoff if there's no cosmic scoreboard, no golden points system? Why even try? Here's the secret. The reward is the process. When you stop needing the universe to cooperate with your plans, when you find calm in effort itself, you've already won. Not the lottery, but something better yourself. You win your own attention back. You're no longer outsourcing your peace to other people's behavior. And that's a win the world can't take from you. So next time you get ghosted, overlooked, or handed a raw deal, pause. This is your arena. This is where you decide whether your story becomes bitter or wise. Stoic karma isn't about climbing some ladder of success. It's about building a soul that doesn't collapse when the scenery shifts. You're already practicing it. The fact that you're even listening to something like this means your mind is seeking alignment, not escape. That's the first step. From here, each moment offers a fork. Will you let this moment own you? Or will you own your stance within it? Will you scroll for distractions, or sit quietly with what is? Will you let your emotions run the show, or will you ask them what they're trying to teach you? And if nothing else today, remember this: karma doesn't come knocking on your door with a clipboard. It grows from how you open that door every morning, with clarity or confusion, with resistance or readiness, with judgment or curiosity. Even your smallest thoughts leave echoes. So choose wisely and lightly. After all, as Epictetus might say today, it's not that deep, bro. But also, yes, it absolutely is. And now, as you step further into this strange terrain, this life of yours, where everything feels urgent, but nothing feels solid, you begin to notice something odd. Emotions flare up like sudden summer storms. One moment you're calm, the next, you're ready to type an all-caps reply to a text that just slightly annoyed you. It happens so fast you barely see it. But here's the Stoic lens again. Cutting through the fog, emotions, they say, are just weather patterns of the mind. Temporary, surprising, not the climate, not the landscape. You can acknowledge them without becoming them. You feel anxious. That doesn't mean you are anxiety. You feel angry. That doesn't mean you're an angry person. The Stoics weren't interested in labeling feelings as good or bad. Instead, they wanted you to notice which feelings help you move toward virtue and which ones distract you from who you're trying to become. They didn't suppress emotions. They studied them like botanists examine wildflowers, curiously, calmly, without assuming every one needs to be plucked. There's a common myth that Stoicism is about being emotionally numb, but that's about as accurate as saying umbrellas cause rain. No, Stoicism invites you to feel deeply, but wisely. You train yourself to notice the emotional impulse, but then ask, is this based on truth? Is this helping me live well? Imagine having that clarity the next time you're on the verge of snapping at someone over a missing phone charger. In fact, the Stoics understood emotion as a kind of judgment. When you feel outraged, for example, it's because you've judged something to be wrong or unfair. But here's the twist. What if your judgment was off? What if you're reacting to an illusion or a story you told yourself too quickly? Seneca, the Roman playwright philosopher, wrote often about this. He wasn't some monk on a hill. He was a statesman in the thick of politics, power, and the occasional assassination attempt. And yet, he practiced this quiet discipline of emotion, to feel it fully and then walk it back to its route. Let's pull out a modern metaphor. Imagine your emotions are like push notifications from an app. They grab your attention, sometimes vibrate your pocket, but you don't have to click them open. You don't have to follow every notification to the end. You can see it, pause, swipe it away. That's the Stoic move. You feel the sting, but you don't give it your keys and let it drive your life for a week. Now think of this. In 1914, Thomas Edison's factory caught fire. The blaze destroyed nearly everything, his life's work gone. When his son found him standing there watching the inferno, the elder Edison reportedly said, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." Was he joking? Maybe. Was he devastated? Probably. But in that moment, he chose presence over panic, humor over helplessness. That's Stoic karma at play. Not that the fire was fair, but that his inner response was free. And here's a twisty truth. Sometimes the emotions you think are protecting you are actually holding you hostage. Like resentment, it feels like armor, but it slowly rusts around your spirit. Or worry, it makes you feel responsible. But often it's just your mind rehearsing failure like it's preparing for a stage play. The Stoics invite you to ask, is this emotion helping me live in alignment with courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom? If not, then maybe it's just noise, static, a pop-up ad in the mind. You don't have to buy what it's selling. Now, this isn't a call to disown your feelings. You're not a robot. You're human. And part of being human means crying during a Pixar movie, getting annoyed in long lines, feeling the full ache of being alive. The Stoic path doesn't deny that. It just teaches you not to collapse into your feelings. Instead, you observe them, sit with them, even thank them, and then choose. Always choose. There's a word for this in modern psychology. Effective forecasting. It turns out, we're terrible at predicting how long we'll feel bad. Breakups, failures, rejections, they hurt, but they rarely destroy us the way we imagine they will. The Stoics understood this before psychology had a name. They knew that time, reflection, and inner steadiness can shrink even the biggest emotional waves into ripples. You learn to ride them, not drown in them. Here's something quirky and almost funny ancient Stoic philosophers used to practice premeditatio malorum, literally. Imagining bad things happening on purpose, they would mentally rehearse losing a friend, a job, their health, not to suffer, but to prepare. They knew that by facing the emotion before it arrived, they could meet it with more grace. It's a bit like rehearsing a fire drill, not because you hope for disaster, but because you want to stay grounded when the smoke starts rising. So how does this all connect to karma? Think of your emotional responses as seeds. Each reaction you repeat: anger, blame, panic, grows roots, not just in your behavior, but in your identity. You begin to become the person who always flares up, or shuts down, or spirals. That's karma, the echo of 1,000 unchecked reactions, becoming your default setting. But the same is true for presence, calm, courage. You can plant those seeds too, and they grow just as quietly. Eventually, you stop being surprised by your own peace. It becomes your new normal. You notice the space between trigger and response, and you stretch it. You find humor in the drama, and you choose not to audition. That's emotional stoicism. Not indifference, but independence. You still feel the whine, but your roots hold. Now let's tie it back to something personal. Think of a time you overreacted. Maybe you lashed out at someone you love. Maybe you carried bitterness longer than it deserved. It's not about shame, it's about awareness. What would you do differently now? That question isn't punishment, it's evolution. That's Stoic karma again, the power to redirect your future by how you engage your present. And if emotions are weather, then what's your climate? What kind of inner atmosphere are you cultivating each day? Are you making space for calm, or letting resentment grow like mold in an old gym bag? The Stoics aren't asking you to ban the rain. They're just offering you an umbrella and reminding you that you get to choose whether you step into the storm or watch it pass with your hands in your coat pockets, smiling. And remember, even a thunderstorm has its rhythm. You're not wrong for feeling shaken, but you're also not required to build a house in the middle of the flood. Let the emotion come. Let it teach, let it go. That, in itself, is a kind of karma. Funny how you don't need to control your emotions to control your life. You just need to recognize that they are guests, not roommates. And every time you welcome them wisely, you strengthen the quiet fortress within. So here you are again, walking into another moment that doesn't go as planned. Maybe someone interrupts you. Maybe a project unravels. Maybe your own mind starts playing reruns of all the times you've failed, disappointed, or hesitated. The temptation rises again to assign blame, to say, if only they hadn't, if only this didn't happen. But slowly, gently, something changes. You start to realize that your peace isn't being held hostage by events, it's being negotiated by your interpretation of them. An interpretation, the Stoics remind you, is always within reach. The ancient Stoics called this proheresis, your ability to choose your perspective. No matter what happens, it's not glamorous, it doesn't come with applause, but it's quietly revolutionary. Think of it like this: life throws you curveballs. Some are soft, some hit hard, but you're not standing there empty-handed. You're holding a bat carved from your values, your training, your self-honesty. You don't control the pitch, you control your swing. Take Admiral James Stockdale, for instance. During the Vietnam War, he was a prisoner of war for over 7 years, tortured, isolated, uncertain if he'd ever see his family again. He credited his survival not to blind optimism, but to a stoic mindset. He accepted reality fully, yet never surrendered his agency. He didn't wait to be rescued to reclaim his dignity. He did it from within a prison cell. This isn't just stoicism under pressure, it's karma as clarity, shaping your soul. Even when the world forgets your name, now look at your own life. You may not be locked in a cell, but you might feel trapped in a cycle, waiting for others to behave, circumstances to shift, the stars to align. But what if liberation isn't external? What if it begins when you take full responsibility, not for what happened, but for what you do next? That's Stoic karma again, not cosmic punishment, but immediate consequence of posture. You plant one mental choice, you live its echo. This might sting a little. You've already survived the things you once thought would break you. And yet, how much of your present is still shackled to old stories? Stories of what should have been said, how they should have treated you, what you deserved but didn't get. The Stoic doesn't dismiss the pain, they just refuse to carry it. Forever, you don't have to relive every wound. You can choose a new narrative, not to erase the past, but to reframe your role in it. From victim to student, from bitterness to builder. Think of it this way: karma isn't retroactive, it's recursive. It loops through how you interpret what happens to you again and again, until you interrupt it with insight, until you say, no, I don't need to prove anything by suffering more. That too is a form of action, a silent one, a powerful one. Now let's talk about one of the more controversial figures in Stoic history. Emperor Nero's tutor, the philosopher Seneca. Critics call him a hypocrite, a man of wealth preaching simplicity. But historians still debate how much of his life was compromise and how much was strategy. What's clear is this: even amid luxury and politics, Seneca was obsessed with preparing for the fall. He practiced poverty. He meditated on death. He wrote letters to his friends reminding them that the only true wealth was internal freedom. Whether he lived it perfectly or not, he knew the terrain. He knew that if your well-being depends on what can be taken from you, then it's not well-being, it's just rented pleasure. You can feel this in your own life. Every time your peace depends on someone else doing the right thing, you've handed them the remote control to your emotions. Every time your worth hinges on approval, likes, praise, you've traded freedom for a fleeting buzz. Stoicism isn't about renouncing joy. It's about anchoring it somewhere indestructible, somewhere that doesn't crash when the market dips or the conversation turns awkward. There's a certain joke the universe seems to enjoy, just when you think you've figured life out. It throws you a puzzle wrapped in a paradox. And maybe that's the point. The Stoics didn't promise ease. They promised clarity, and clarity, more often than not, comes dressed as challenge. Ask yourself this: what if karma wasn't a scoreboard, but a mirror? Not what happens to you, but how truthfully you see yourself in each response. Are you aligned with your values? Are you moving with inner gravity? Or are you drifting with whatever emotion hits first? These aren't easy questions, but they're the ones that make a life feel like yours. Here's something wild. According to researchers, people who believe they control their fate tend to be healthier, live longer, and recover faster from setbacks. It's called an internal locus of control. The Stoics knew this long before psychology gave it a name. They built their philosophy around this sense, that you are responsible for what you bring into each moment, not in a moralistic sense, but in a deeply liberating one. When you take that kind of responsibility, you no longer feel like life is happening to you. You're co-authoring it. It's humbling, but it's also exhilarating. You're not owed anything, and yet you're free to create almost anything within the boundaries of your nature, your time, your capacity. That's not limiting, it's grounding. It reminds you to stop asking for control where you have none, and to start exercising It where you do dots, so maybe today you just do one thing differently. You pause before replying. You catch your breath before judging. You remind yourself that meaning isn't in the event, it's in your attention. That's Stoic karma. Quiet but immediate. You don't need to wait 10 years for the reward. The reward is this very moment, lived awake. And if none of this makes you feel immediately stronger, that's okay. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just not reacting the way you used to. Sometimes it's forgiving yourself for yesterday. Sometimes it's simply showing up with your full attention, again and again. And now you're standing at the edge of something quieter but no less powerful. A deeper form of responsibility is beginning to take root in you. Not the kind that scolds or shames, but the kind that steadies your feet. You're realizing that your destiny isn't a single event. It's not that one job, or that one decision, or that one lucky break. It's the sum of 1,000 quiet moments where you chose to lean inward instead of lashing outward, where you chose patience over panic, stillness over noise. You think about this the next time someone cuts in front of you in traffic or sends you a passive-aggressive email. You feel that old fire rise, that old script, how dare they? But now something interrupts it. A pause, a breath, a choice, and in that space, you begin to see something new. Your reaction is your reputation, not just to the world, but to yourself. This is where Stoicism becomes a kind of spiritual maturity, not because it makes you passive, but because it makes you precise. You stop wasting energy on things you can't shape. You start conserving your strength for the places where your soul can actually plant something real. It's the same kind of strength that built ancient aqueducts or navigated by starlight, or carved cathedrals from stone. Not dramatic, not sudden, just consistent, just focused. Karma, in this view, isn't magic, it's memory. It's the way your character accumulates, the grooves your choices carve into your nature. You don't become wise in a week. You become wise by returning again and again to the practice of choosing better, even when it's hard. And history gives you examples. Take Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, military commander, writer of meditations, and probably the last good ruler of a declining empire. He faced plague, war, betrayal, even the death of his own children. Yet his writings are filled not with despair, but with discipline, not with outrage, but with order. He reminded himself that everything external is like the wind, unpredictable, impersonal. Only his own response was within his command. That's not emotional detachment. That's emotional craftsmanship. And what about you? You might not be commanding legions, but you're still leading something: your family, your mind, your days. Every time you resist the urge to speak harshly, every time you choose humility over ego, you're practicing the same craft. You're reinforcing a version of yourself you won't regret. You're building a karma not of outcomes, but of alignment. Let's explore that more. In the world of Stoic karma, alignment is everything. Not success, not applause, not even happiness. Just congruence. What you say matches what you do. What you feel lines up with what you value. And what you fear begins to shrink under the weight of your own clarity. That's the real transformation. Not lightning bolts from heaven, but finally becoming someone you trust. It sounds simple, maybe even boring. But try this. Spend one day acting only on what you deeply believe. No flattery, no shortcuts, no emotional shortcuts or performative kindness, just integrity, moment to moment. You'll be surprised how hard it is and how rewarding. Because every time you act from that place, the world shifts slightly. Maybe not on the outside, but inside, where it counts, something starts to glow. Now, here's a strange truth. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't feel good. At least, not immediately. Saying no to gossip, owning your mistake, walking away from something that flatters your ego but shrinks your soul. These don't come with applause. But Stoic karma tells you this. The quiet discomfort of integrity is always worth more than the loud pleasure of compromise. And sometimes the hardest part is this: doing the right thing when no one sees, when no one claps, when no one says thank you. That's where karma lives, not in cosmic reward points, but in the echo that stays with you when the room is empty. You've heard the saying, character is who you are when no one's watching. But Stoicism goes further. Character is what you notice when you're watching. It's how you treat yourself and your own thoughts. It's whether you congratulate your conscience after a hard choice, or let it wither from neglect. Let's not pretend this is always graceful. Sometimes you'll mess up. You'll snap at someone you love. You'll take the easy way out. You'll say something clever when you should have stayed silent. That's okay. The Stoics weren't saints, they were students, and their greatest virtue wasn't perfection. It was perseverance, the ability to return again and again to what mattered, even after failure. So maybe your karma today isn't about changing the world. Maybe it's just about changing your posture, about softening the armor, about laughing at your own hypocrisy without giving up. You are allowed to be both, imperfect and committed. That paradox is where your destiny begins to bend. Let's wrap this around a curious historical twist. In the 1600s, Japanese samurai were encouraged to read Stoic texts alongside their own Bushido code. They found something deeply compatible: the embrace of death, the discipline of thought, the refusal to let external events define internal honor. Even in a culture thousands of miles from Rome, the Stoic flame reached across oceans. Why? Because its truth is elemental. Fire burns the same no matter the language. Karma flows the same, whether you're in a toga or a kimono, and you modern, scrolling, half distracted, you are no less capable of wielding that flame. You may not face swords or catapults, but you face deadlines, misunderstandings, old wounds, new temptations, and in every one of them, the same invitation hums beneath the surface. Who are you becoming? So when you feel lost, when your plans derail or your motivation fades, come back to that question. Not what do I want, but who am I practicing to be? That's the core of Stoic karma. It's not about reward, it's about rehearsal. You become what you repeatedly do. You sculpt your soul with every small decision, even the ones no one sees, especially those. And then one day, without fanfare or music, you realize something. You're no longer chasing the version of yourself you once thought you had to be. You're becoming it, not in some grand transformation, but in dozens of tiny, unseen pivots. You've started trading the high of control for the peace of presence. You don't clench so tightly. You don't argue with life so loudly. You let it rain without needing to shout at the sky. That's not resignation, that's recognition. And it's more powerful than it looks. There's a strange joy in watching your reactions change. Like noticing one morning that the echo in your mind is quieter. The voice that once panicked is now patient. The fear that once clenched your chest now knocks gently and waits. These aren't just personal wins, they're spiritual renovations. You didn't just learn to stay calm. You learned to stop leaking your energy into things that were never yours to command. This is where Stoic karma becomes fully visible, not as a scoreboard, but as a tone shift. You walk into situations differently. You stop performing in rooms where your peace is the cost of entry. You know your worth isn't calibrated by comparison. You smile more, not because life is easier, but because your soul is less at war with itself. But still, life tests you. A loved one disappoints you. A long-held dream crumbles. An unexpected illness slows your plans. These are the fires in which your philosophy gets forged. This is the karma that burns, not to punish, but to purify. The Stoics called this sympathy the deep interconnection between all things. You're not being singled out by fate. You're participating in a larger rhythm. Even suffering has its season, and seasons change. Here's a story you've likely heard, but maybe never quite noticed this way. In 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted, burying Pompeii in volcanic ash. Most fled, but a few stayed. Archaeologists later uncovered a man frozen in time, sitting calmly, hands folded, not far from a scroll. Scholars speculate he may have been a philosopher, perhaps a Stoic. Perhaps, in the final seconds of his life, he did not curse fate, but embraced it. Not because he gave up, but because he saw the shape of his destiny was complete. That, too, is Stoic karma, not escape from death, but meeting it with readiness. So you ask yourself, what am I folding my hands over today? What am I clinging to that no longer serves? What story am I telling myself about how life should be? Instead of how it is, you begin to see that destiny isn't fate, it's direction. And karma isn't justice, it's alignment. You're not here to win the game of life. You're here to play it with honesty, steadiness, and love. Love for truth, love for growth, even love for the parts of you that are still learning how to let go. And no, it's not always beautiful. Sometimes it looks like quiet grief, sometimes like exhausted acceptance, sometimes like laughing in a grocery store because the universe sent you the exact person you were trying to avoid. Karma has a sense of humor like that. But each time you step back into awareness, you realign your compass, you recalibrate your choices, you stop chasing an imaginary future where everything makes sense. You start building a present where you make sense. And yes, people might notice. They'll wonder why you don't spiral like you used to, why you're calm in traffic, why you smile in tension, why you don't gossip, argue, or defend your every opinion like it's your birthright. You won't feel superior. You'll feel quieter, like a river that stopped resisting the rocks and started learning how to flow. By now, you've probably noticed something else. The karma you've been working on, it's not just shaping your reactions, it's shaping your relationships. Because when you change the way you show up, you start changing the tone of every room you enter. And that tone, it becomes your legacy, not in grand gestures, in simple ripples. You hold eye contact longer, you say thank you more, you listen. Without preparing your next defense, you speak from your values, not your moods. That's karma made visible. 1,000 ordinary choices made with extraordinary care. And if you're wondering if it's worth it, this slow, steady, unglamorous work, the answer is always yes. Because the world doesn't need more winners. It needs more wise ones. More quiet warriors who meet each moment with clarity, not control. With character, not calculation. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. You don't have to have answers. You just have to return to your breath, to your body, to the clarity that waits when the noise dies down. And when you mess up and you just begin again. That's Stoic. Karma too, the freedom to return. No score kept. Just intention renewed. So now you walk. Not to arrive, but to continue. Not to prove, but to practice. You meet your life like a craftsman meets wood. Not for speed, but for texture. Not for praise, but for precision. You carve your soul slowly, intentionally, gratefully. And maybe that's what it means to truly control your destiny. Not by force, but by fidelity. Not by overpowering life, but by tuning yourself to its rhythm. You can't always predict the path, but you can decide how you travel it with grace, with grit. With the quiet certainty that even when life is unfair, your response doesn't have to be. Now the world still spins, the bills still come, the noise still returns. But something has shifted. You no longer chase your destiny. You embody it. Step by step, breath by breath. Quietly, steadily, surely, you've become your own compass. You've become your own karma. Let the words settle. Let the thoughts dissolve. You don't have to hold any of this tightly. Let it float like a lantern into the night. You've already begun the work. You've already planted the seed. Each day is an echo of the practice. Some days you'll falter. Some days you'll shine. But each day you return, you refine. And that is more than enough. So breathe. Be still. And trust the quiet truth you now carry. You are the author of your karma. You are the craftsman of your fate. You are already on the path. End of script. Thank you for listening, everyone.